Great, and good evening. Welcome to BIPOC and the Outdoors. BIPOC, for anyone who doesn't know, stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. I'm Keegan Calkins. I'm the library director at the Worthen Library. This program is a part of our Winter Wednesday series in cooperation with the South Hero Land Trust. We have two final programs that are a part of that series. On Wednesday, April 14th at 7, Migrant Justice will be with us to share stories about the migrant farm worker community in Vermont and Migrant Justice's Milk with Dignity campaign. And on April 28th at 7 p.m., we will be discussing the film Farmsteaders and have a farmer panel. Emily Alger and Guy McGuire from South Hero Land Trust are here to help monitor the chat and direct questions later in our question and answer portion. So if you have questions, go ahead and pop them into the chat or the Q&A features. Guy, did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Guy McGuire, and I'm from South Hero Land Trust. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you so much to our speakers for being with us. And thanks to you, Keegan, and the library. It's been really great to be able to partner with the library for this, our second year of doing the winter webinar series. I believe this is the 4th or 5th event this year, I think, and it's been really great to be able to provide these. I know I've learned a lot, and it's been a lot of thought-provoking discussion. So I'm really looking forward to tonight. Please put questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll have some time at the end for that. If you want to learn more about the Land Trust, you can look us up, shlt.org. Thanks everyone for being here.
Great, and we also would like to thank the American Library Association. This program is made possible from the LTC grant from the American Library Association, so thank you. We love you, thank you for all that you do. And now I would like to turn the discussion over to our panelists, who I would like to profoundly thank for being so generous with your time and insight this evening. I would like to start by having you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about the work you do. So why don't we start with Debbie?
Hi everyone, my name is Debbie Archer. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Education Program Manager at Audubon, Vermont. Audubon, Vermont is a state office of the National Audubon Society. And I have been working for Audubon for a little over 6 years. Other fun things about myself, I live in Montpelier with my partner and our cats. I'm a birder and I love birding. So thank you all so much for having me.
Great, thanks. And Candace, how about you go next?
Hello everyone, I'm Candace Taylor. I use they, them, she, her pronouns. I live in Winooski, Vermont on Abenaki land, and I do a lot of things actually. I am connected to kind of different worlds, from being a yoga teacher and a cook and chef and holistic health and wellness, coach and educator, food educator. But most importantly, and most kind of like central in my life right now is I'm in the process of building a BIPOC wholeness center and urban farm right here on my own urban homestead in Winooski. So I will be offering things that I've already offered on a smaller scale, on a much larger scale, from, mentorships and educational workshops and not trainings, but educational workshops and offerings here on the homestead, not only from myself, but I'll be collaborating with other BIPOC in the community to offer those types of offerings here. And the point and the whole kind of like central focus is on wholeness, liberation, self-sufficiency, sovereignty, mutual aid, community care. These are the things that are very central to the work that I'm doing here on the homestead. Again, on my own and in collaboration with others. So for example, I'll also be working with Shift Meals out of the Skinny Pancake, and I'll be one of their farm mentors. And I will be working with a very specific BIPOC Grow Team mentorship program with them as well, right here on the homestead. So just a lot of land-based, ancestrally informed just offerings here that are, again, centered around our own wholeness and liberation. So super excited. And just really quick too, also just offering something called community care shares as well for the community. So all the food that we're going to be growing that's in my greenhouse right now are going to be offered for free to BIPOC in the community throughout the year as well. So super excited about that. And lastly, I also have a little botanica shop. So all the things that I grow here, I preserve herbs and plants and flowers and offer them for sale for bulk, or I often make small batch medicinals and things like that as well. So lots of that type of stuff over here. And Debbie, I'm a big bird lover, so I would love to learn more from you. Like, I am in love with birds, so please let me come and just pick your brain a little bit sometime.
Great. Thank you, Candace. And Kenya, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Candace, you're amazing. Debbie, you're amazing. It's so fun to hear people describe their work and hear about what they love to do. My name's Kenya Lazuli. She, her are my pronouns. I am 1/3 of Radical Imagination, and what that means to us is an arts residency, workshops and skill shares on the land in Corinth, Vermont, and land work, which is sort of like my area that I sort of like focused on primarily last year when everything fell apart. I started doing a lot of work collaborating with the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust to create the project called Every Town, in which every town in the state will have at least one parcel of land placed permanently in trust for BIPOC access and stewardship. And that is what's making my heart sing right now.
That's great. Thank you, Kenya. And finally, Hannah, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm so stoked and honored right now. I'm just sitting with everything that y'all just shared because y'all are incredible, absolutely incredible. So my name is Hannah Sadek. I use they, them, and Z here pronouns, and I'm coming at you from unceded Abenaki land, specifically of the Elnu Abenaki tribe on so-called Cavendish, Vermont. I run, oh my goodness, hi Sav. The Black River runs along me to the right, and then Cascadenac, which is settled as Muscatney Mountain, is overlooking us to the left. So that's where I'm settled right now. That's where I'm contextualized. And I'm speaking as one small slice of the Vermont Relief Collective. And I absolutely incredible for us, BIPOC Vermont Collective of folks involved with land, environment, agriculture, and foodway systems. And I am the land organizer, and also as one of the organizing crew for Unlikely Riders, which is a BIPOC Vermont collective of folks who love skiing and snowboarding and snow sliding and also just finding joy outdoors. So that's who I am, and that's how I'm entering today. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So now we'll kick it off with some questions. This first question will be for Candace, but if any of the panelists have anything to say, please go ahead and do so. Candace, on your website for Conscious Homestead, you discuss why an urban farm, and you wrote, reconnecting and remembering the land as our kin is a sacred privilege and calling. Would you speak more to this?
Yes, I can. And I know so many of us here totally vibe with that and understand what that means as well. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it if you want. But so yeah, reconnecting and remembering the land is our sacred kin is, as our kin is a sacred privilege and calling, to me means that there has, one thing you're always gonna have to know about me is I'm real and I'm very unfiltered and incredibly blunt. So something that I think is very important to understand and name first and foremost is that I, speaking for myself, first and foremost, I am a descendant of, folks who have been displaced and brought here against our will, my ancestors. And so there has, because of that, in my own kind of personal narrative, but also when you expand that to not only other Black folk, but folks within the BIPOC kind of larger umbrella, we understand what it means in our own different ways to be displaced. Whether it's folks that are Indigenous and displaced within their own land, having their own land taken from them here, or again, from my own story and my own lineage and my own ancestry, being brought here and displaced from our land elsewhere. And the trauma and the legacy, if you want to even call it that, of colonization, of white supremacy, of oppression in general, in all of its forms, is ultimately to cause fragmentation. And this fragmentation and separation for me is incredibly rooted in land and in place. And it's, when you think about how land and place not only is our home, but it connects us to our ways, our history, our lineage, the ways in which colonization, not only again that happened in the past, but is still happening now, has impacted that, is again this kind of disconnection from the land, from our own home, from all the stories, the wisdom, the ways of being with one another and the land that is something that I feel is our birthright. Ultimately, we are all natured beings. And the myth and the lie that capitalism and colonization has gifted us, unfortunately, is this forgetting that we are part of the land. And in really profound and sacred and intimate ways. And so the act of reconnecting is one of the most radical things one can do. The act of remembering, once we reconnect to the land, about those ways is something that is it's just so incredibly profound. And I'm still constantly unpacking that, to be quite honest with you. But it is our sacred right, and it is our I think, calling to remember that the land is our kin, that we are part of the earth as much as the earth is a part of us. We are responsible for the land, and the land cares for us. And if we can find a way to prioritize that and to, in fact, center it, I think we will do great good overall, in not only our own community, but in the world. But this is something that I am deeply committed to finding ways to bridge that divide, because of things like slavery and the trauma associated with slavery and the ways in which, for example, my own ancestors have been used as tools to rape and steal and, dominate and oppress and take from the land. Has caused in many ways over, quite some time, a disconnect within, and I've heard this from many Black folks, where they don't even want to go to the land sometimes. We don't even want to go to the land because we have been used in ways to be in relationship with the land in a way that has been taking and not reciprocal, which has been violent, And so I think it is really important for Black folks, BIPOC folks, to find a way to be back in relationship with the land in a way that is not colonial, capitalistic, is not taking and violent. And to remember that this is actually something that is in our blood, in our DNA, that has been a part of our ancestral gifts and wisdom for so long. And that the conversations around this work that tends to center white folks or whiteness, as the land stewards and things like that, is something that's actually very, very new, and not something that, it has been misrepresented, I think, as something that is like, BIPOC folks aren't in the outdoors. BIPOC folks aren't people that have a relationship or connection or history with the land, when in fact, a lot of the things that white folks teach in permaculture and in, you know, all these other different kinds of, you know, in agriculture in general, a lot of it is theft and taken from our own ancestors' ways and knowing of being with the land, and repackaged and even, I would say, watered down to be kind of sold as this is something that, you know, white folks invented. And or that is only for white people. You know, think of how many times you go to like any kind of like, you know, outdoor space or a gardener supply or anything like that, and you see like their little kind of home section, and you see like their, you know, their pot holders that have like the farmers on it, you know, or like, you know, the magazines that you see that have, you know, everybody on the cover is usually white, you know what I mean, of the seed pack. I used to get seed, like my favorite thing every year is to get my seed catalogs, like my favorite thing. Every year I like wait for my seed catalogs to come. And this was the first year in all the years that I've been homesteading and tending the land that I have seen the seed catalogs actually have brown folks on it. It was like after 2020 and all the stuff that happened this past year, finally organizations were trying to actually have some more representation. But the truth of the matter is it has been misrepresented for so long. And so for me, it's really important as a person who is committed to finding my own way of living with, not over the land, and of being a land steward, and of being and creating a space where my people, where BIPOC folks can heal that colonial, violent imprint on our stories, and remember that, you know, we actually have a very deep, rich, beautiful, vibrant history of being land stewards. And I want to be a part of us remembering that, because it's a part of our wholeness, our healing, and remembering. So it's a lot. There's a lot there. I can talk about these types of things in many different ways, but I think that's my little nutshell. And if we have more questions, please, you know, we can talk more about it in the future. But that is why I feel it is a sacred calling, and why I think it's a privilege, especially now.
Thank you.
I love the comments.
Yeah. And so we will, the next question will be for Hannah. Hannah, you work for the Vermont Relief Collective. Relief stands for Racial Equity in Land, Environment, Agriculture, and Foodways. How are these things connected, and what does racial equality look like in these areas?
Thank you for that question. Also, yeah, really, I'm sitting with your words, Candace. I'm feeling them internally, and I really just want to hold that for a moment longer, because thank you. Yeah, so, whew, and I'm so honored to be a community member, a collective member of Relief, and I'm honored that I have the chance to speak here today. And I do want to shout out Liv, who is is just the incredible one who brought us all together, and I'm forever grateful and in awe of you and of that. So thinking of land, environment, agriculture, and food, and when you have like racial equity and then those four things, it spells out relief, which is it's a neat little package. And then you think of how we have organizers for each of these, and we have other folks in our crew who also represent different venues, but they're so deeply hand in hand and so deeply connected. And I feel all of them inside of me, and just I think it's an entry point for like knowing that when you're in Vermont, that there's even this place for you as a BIPOC person to enter here. And I'll speak to it for myself. Like, I am not necessarily like a farmer. I don't have like a degree in environmental science. So a lot of these spaces I haven't known, like I'm allowed to have a voice on any of these topics. Although it's something that's held me up, this land. I've been in this place my whole life, and it's really been healing for me. So to be in this space where you can show up as you are, and I really view like the Relief Collective as a little plot of soil, of land, and you're allowed to exist there and sprout and grow however you would like to, like authentically as yourself, and you have room for that, and you have like space for that, and water and sunlight. And again, I'd never experienced that before either here in like my 25 years in Vermont. Just, you can be here, you don't need to perform, you can show up however you are, and then whatever comes from that, we will hold that space for you, we will validate you. It is needed in community. So going back to your original question, so we're here for racial equity. Equality would be like seeing us and then just providing us the same thing, the same conditions as everything else, and then wondering why nothing's growing. When the story by how we've got here, it requires, like, that's an injustice not to know that story and not to see that we're here for equity. We're here for understanding that it requires so much more and not just the same thing as everyone else in order for us to take root, in order for us to really to be full and to be authentic. So all this is to say, racial equity in land, environment, agriculture, and food. I'm still learning what that looks like and what that means. And I've been involved with this collective since almost the beginning, and having the space held to vision for what that is. That's currently what that is for me right now. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Hannah. So the next question will be for Debbie. And if anybody wants to comment on anything somebody just said, please feel free. Debbie, you've been a birder for 10 years. How has being a Black birder changed or not changed during the last decade?
Thank you for the question and for the space to talk about it. And I'm going to take a note from Candace's book because my very personal opinion is that it hasn't changed. That's not to say and to honor and to recognize that there are lots of BIPOC folks who are working really, really hard to bring attention to the fact that there are people of color enjoying all sorts of activities outside, all sorts of activities, period, but all sorts of activities in the outdoors that are white, right? And so that has been the case forever, right? My brother was a collegiate swim team member, right? So like there are so many, so I'm gonna not go too far down there. So, right, like I, until recently, wouldn't have been like, hi, I'm Debbie, I'm a Black birder, right? I wouldn't have that. I'm Black and I am a birder, and those things intersect and help make me parts of who I am. But lately, and in the last, definitely in the last year, when people have been paying a lot of attention to what is happening in the world around them and who they share spaces with, this attention and this focus has been put on Black birders. So now I guess I feel seen a little bit more. And I mean, I still am very aware of my presence in the outdoors, right? Like I love town trails. I love walking through town. So I also like to bird there. I am not a morning person, right? The idea of waking up at dawn to go to a marsh to find that rare bird, like that sounds so beautiful. And I will stay in bed and think about that, right? So like by the time I get myself together and I'm outside, I'm like, I don't have time to make it to that place to spend time, like before it's dark and there's no birds. So I feel like I end up birding in very public places. And I am always aware that I'm walking through town, some of our lovely rural towns in the state, where I may not have been seen before there. And now I'm walking around with binoculars around my neck, like very slowly, like exactly like looking at the northern parulas in your yard and your tree. And I am still carrying that. However, I am hopeful now because, like I said, there are lots of people who've been doing work. I mean, there are people that have been around and also been birders this whole time, but now are giving a little bit more spotlight and amplification that they are out there and that they are enjoying birding as well. And there are podcasts and books and, Instagram accounts all blowing up, which is amazing. So I'm hopeful that what this means is that when people see me or see someone who might look like me out with binoculars, that they are, that means great. You're like, oh, that's a person birding, and you move on with your life. And it's not, and it doesn't mean anything. And I'm probably going to have that anxiety for a little while longer. But I'm hopeful that people will have this, I don't know, cultural shift, and will say, oh yeah, of course that person belongs here out on this trail. Of course that person has those binoculars, that camera, and it's fine. But something that I'm also appreciating, though, that now that there are so many more resources and these books being published and podcasts, something I didn't realize, it's nice to know that I have community now, something that like I didn't realize I didn't have. And now it's like, oh wait, like I can actually download the latest episode of this podcast and tune in to Sam and Always Be Burdened, right? So like that is joyful and really nice. And so I look forward to more of that being accessible and in my life. So birding is very much on the cusp, and there's a lot of conversations happening in the birding realm right now. And I expect a lot more changes to come down the line in the birding realm as well. But for right now, I mean, we're definitely just peeking behind the curtain, I think.
Great. And a question for Kenya. Your collective is called Radical Imagination. Why did you and the other co-founders choose this name, and how does it fit in with your mission?
Thank you. Solid question. I'm going to like sort of cherry pick everybody's answers for my answer, because every time you were saying something, I was like, yes, me too. So I have run a residency, an arts residency for 5 years in Vermont. I grew up here and moved away for 25 years and then came home. And that was an intense decision for all of the reasons everyone's been talking about. And when we started running this residency, it was my partner and I, and we were like, okay, how do we get people to come here? How do we have a job where we don't drive 45 minutes in every direction? And we're both artists and we have all the stuff. And so we started, and what we found was that the people that can afford to come to an arts residency in Vermont are white people. And the people we want to serve are not the people who are already being served. So we did that for many years, and we created scholarships. We did what we could to get people to come here, but we ran into all of the same things that everybody has mentioned. Like getting BIPOC in the outdoors is not like an easy sell. And being one of being in one of the whitest states in the country has like some stigma attached to it. People don't necessarily think they'll ever feel safe here. So when last year happened, all of the horrific events of last summer, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't serve white people anymore in my home. I couldn't make food for groups of white people. I couldn't do that anymore. And it was just not on the table for us. And my partner bowed out gracefully, and I teamed up with 2 other women of color, and we radically reimagined this residency and radically reimagined our work and radically reimagined the concept of seeing BIPOC in the outdoors. Because what we've seen historically, or what we're told that we see when we see BIPOC in the outdoors, is people slaving away under the hot sun, toiling under the hot sun. And that is not what we're doing here. We're relaxing, we're experiencing joy and ease, and we're eating delicious food and making art and like socializing with each other. So radical imagination came from the dire need to radically reimagine what people think of when they see BIPOC in the wilderness. And it's kind of great. I met Hannah at one of these events. We had a wilderness skills workshop, and I met Hannah. Hannah came, and it was like the most magical weekend of my life to see, I think, upwards of 20 people, 20 BIPOC in the woods. We didn't go inside. We like camped and foraged and like walked around in the woods and gathered firewood and sat around fires and talked for hours on end. And it was joyful, and it was like nothing I've ever seen anywhere before. So that's sort of like radical imagination came from a need, from a lack. And the goal is that like we'll continue to radically reimagine what happens in our country and in our space and in our, you know, on this land, and like what happens if we ask Indigenous people first what we're going to do with the land. What if we ask people like if we can, you know, like steward this respectfully and regeneratively, and then also like, come on, welcome. What if we share space? What if, you know, like all of the things that we're taught that we don't do in our American culture that is led by whiteness and ruined by whiteness a lot of the time. So we just want to flip it. We want to like go back and start where we need to start, and start like by listening to ourselves and to each other, and follow, you know, like where that leads us.
All right. I had this question kind of lower down, but I'm bumping it up after listening to you all speak. What are the best ways that we attending this and people who will watch the recording after can support your work? So why don't we start with Kenya?
Oh, I have the perfect answer. Thank you. I thought you'd never ask. So for the Everytown project, where we're trying to get access to land in every town in the state, we need anti-racist mutual aid networks everywhere. We need for people to feel safe moving into those communities, and we need for y'all to do the work. So we have a neighbors project where we like help do trainings and encourage people and like, you know, put out resources for people to do this work, but please start now. Please start yesterday. Like we can't live here if it's not safe for us. And so we need help making it safe for us. And that's like, I mean, if people want to get in touch with me, that's absolutely fine. everytownvt@gmail. I can be reached there. And I can connect you with a neighbors group. But I think before you even get there, you know, like read a book, talk to your neighbor, talk to, you know, and you don't have to talk to the white supremacist down the street. You can talk to someone who agrees with you and like support each other, and then keep working. And we will help you with resources. And we have people on our team who actually do want to talk to the white supremacists down the street. So that's where I would say to start.
Thank you. Candace, how can we support your work?
Thank you for the question. I'm gonna just go straight to it. Like, I am trying to, I mean, like Kenya has the work that Kenya is speaking about with regards to the, you know, Everytown and land access. That is one of the biggest challenges, you know, for BIPOC is access to land, because white folks hoard that shit. Oh sorry. I'm sorry. I swear. I'm sorry. And so that is why because you know, I've had this vision for a very long time, and I've tried to work with, you know, local governments and people who are in real estate and people who had money and land and resources, all white, all saying, great idea, cute idea, you know, but nothing. So I decided to give up on trying to, you know, do that, and said, I have my home, and it might not be a whole lot of land. It's not even like a half an acre of land. It's not even like a quarter acre of land. You know what I mean? But I have a home and I have a backyard. And so I said, forget it. I'm done waiting and, you know, wasting my time trying to apply for grants and chasing, you know, these, you know, gatekeepers of money and land in not only the state of Vermont, but, you know, in the whole entire country. And so I decided I'm going to use this little piece of land and I'm going to build what I can for BIPOC in my own backyard, because that's what I can do. And so I can't do it alone. I'm not a millionaire. And anyone that is a millionaire or a billionaire, by the way, is, you know, should be really looking into that, because you're likely, you know, exploiting a whole lot of people. But I just think, and usually BIPOC. But if you have, whether it's $5, $50, $100, I need money, you know? So I need the ability to have financial support. I have a GoFundMe, and every dollar goes towards growing food for BIPOC, scholarships and funding for, you know, BIPOC to come and learn on the land here, for BIPOC leaders and educators and healers and folks like all the beautiful human beings right here, right now, to be able to come to my homestead and be able to teach other BIPOC. You know, I would love it if Debbie can come to the homestead and teach other BIPOC about birds. You know what I mean? Like that was like, woo, you know, I would love it if Kenya could come and teach, or we could bring folks to Kenya, you know, and teach and have them learn about art and all those beautiful stuff. I would love to be able to have Hannah come and be like, hey, let's teach you about how to do this, that, or the other outdoors. You know I already told Hannah, I was like, please help me learn how to maybe snowboard or something like that, you know, without being terrified, you know what I mean? Or support Hannah, you know what I mean? These are because I want to be able to provide these resources for BIPOC to be able to reconnect to the land. So I have a GoFundMe that will be super supportive. I also do things like BIPOC care packages. I haven't shared that, but every quarter, every season, I get together with other BIPOC makers and we create little care packages that we send for free to BIPOC everywhere that can be sponsored by white allies. We've got community care shares, like I told you, that is coming up. So if folks can either, if you're even a farm and you have additional, you know, vegetables that you can help to contribute, or if you're a farm that has maybe some additional meats that you can contribute, or if you just have funds and you're willing to send some money our way so that we can make sure that we can either build those relationships with other folks or grow the food ourselves. You know, I'm also collaborating with other people who are going to also help to grow additional things that we can't fit in our backyard to be able to provide for BIPOC for free in the community. You know, so wealth redistribution, mutual aid, community care, that is what will be super supportive for me at this particular point in place and time. I don't need people to suggest about going to this grant or going to apply for this like award. I'm one human being doing all the things that I'm doing. I don't have time to then on top of that chase after these organizations to hopefully get money. I want the money free and unconditionally provided to this project that I'm working on. And it's not for me, it is for the BIPOC community. Everything that we're doing goes right back. And like Kenya says, I love Kenya saying, if I have it, we got it. You know what I mean? I'm totally down for that. Like when you said that to one time on a panel, I was like, Kenya, yes, you were like speaking my heart, because that is what I see BIPOC communities do. So that would be a deep, deep support. If y'all can go to my CandiceJennifer.me website, I have everything on there. I'll link it in the chat. There's a GoFundMe there. There's, you know, all the projects that I'm working on. You can figure out how you want to do it. And lastly, I could always use some volunteer support in the future too. Like in the next few weeks, believe it or not, we're going to be doing some major turning over of the land here. I can use some bodies. I can use some folks that might have some rototillers or some extra shovels or some extra, you know, ability to help us move and turn over the land here to be able to prepare the land for the food that we're going to grow. And we're going to be building a geodesic dome, so I can use some folks to help us build that. You know, so there's all that is listed on our website, volunteer, you know, list that you can sign up for and also be of support in that way. Because I know not every white person has money either, you know, and so if you have the ability to offer your time and your energy, or even just some of your resources that you have, that would be really helpful too. So thank you.
And Debbie, how can we help support your work?
My work is directly tied to a large nonprofit. So Audubon Vermont, the National Audubon Society sort of works in concentric circles, like sort of like layers of an onion. So Audubon Vermont, while yes, we are part of the National Audubon Society, we do our own fundraising. That being said, I work for an organization. I work for an organization that can apply for grants and has people that apply for grants. So if you're looking for monetary support, I'm just going to go ahead and shout out Kenya and Hannah and Candace. Not that I'm going to say don't support Audubon Vermont, because we do really good work. And I think our education programs are top notch. We also have a scholarship program. So if you are interested in donating and you specifically say, hey, I'd like to support to make sure that kids have access to education programs, reach out to us. Happy to have that conversation with you. Also from the side of working for, you know, sort of a more corporate program and project here, I'll also say that you can support my work by reaching out to those other environmental organizations you work for and ask them questions. Ask them, how do they support their BIPOC communities? What does their staffing look like? You know, find out what they are supporting or not supporting and why. You can ask those questions. They are asking for your money. You can ask them some hard questions. Our education programs, we regularly have schools that can't come and they want to come on to either our center in Huntington, the Green Mountain Audubon Center. If they want to come to us for a field trip or a program, or they want us to go to them, we love that. That's what I do when it's not a pandemic. And so we often have students, though, from schools that are either Title I schools, schools with high proportions of BIPOC students, rural schools. They often say, we would love to come on a field trip, but we don't have the funds to do so. I do not want to turn those schools away. So if you have the resources to help it so that we can make sure that those schools and students still have the ability to come on those field trips, that would be an excellent way to support us. And, you know, continuing to ensure that those students have the same opportunities to get to come outside and learn about the natural history that's in their backyard and here. So that would be a lovely way. Also, we have an AmeriCorps member who has been working really hard on auditing our bookshelf. And so she is going to soon have a wish list of books that increase the diversity of our bookshelf. audubonvermont.org, that list will be up soon, and that would be another great way that we would just love some support.
Great. And Hannah, if you would like to discuss how we can support your work, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So also echoing Debbie, supporting Kenya and Candace, that's it. Like, that's the thing. If you would like to, Vermont Relief Collective right now has a donation place online. I'll put that link in here. And also, Unlikely Riders, you can donate to us there as well. And I think that's really what it is just showing up with your pockets. And I think of, yeah, like Kenya, you mentioned the first place that we met was in that BIPOC like wilderness like skills space. And you mentioned there like your story, and I really resonated being someone who is born and raised here and left for a little bit and came back, and you were the first person who spoke to me. I think I might have told you this before, but I mean it every single time. Like, you said that if I wanted to be of here, if I want this to be my home, like it can be. And it took that for me to understand that I had never really set my roots down here. I'd always just kind of been cooped up, and like it took you saying that to really allow me to sink into the soil. And then I remember after that weekend, I came home into a community conversation on reparations with Candace, and that was where I met you. So yeah. And then I think of this winter and Debbie, how we got to connect on snow. And like, y'all are really like, this community is really like why I'm okay. And like, I just go back to that every single time. And I mean that so deeply. So like, when you have an opportunity to be directly told from like folks in Vermont who are working with grassroots BIPOC organizations or working with the community who are really like doing this for the people, show up for that. So that's how you can support us. So thank you.
Okay, and if everyone wouldn't mind just briefly speaking on what maybe your favorite outdoor space or outdoor spaces in Vermont are, and kind of what that means to you, and then maybe we can open up for questions. So, Hannah, do you want to go, since you just spoke, go again?
I have so much to say on this. I would love to speak on this. So I started skiing when I was 3, alpine skiing. And then like, that's kind of been a huge part of my fabric of my life. And like competed in alpine downhill skiing through school. And for the past 2 years, I was like a coach with that and like a strength coach with that at like a ski academy. And I left that space because there's a limit to whiteness and operating within certain systems and stepping out of that and being able to be in this space now. Anyway, so I love being on snow and not being traumatized. I love being with community on snow. I love teaching folks how to have fun on snow. I love the joy of going fast and feeling like the wind in your hair and you feel free. And it's so delightful. Okemo is a mountain I've skied at for a long time. There's a hill next to my house that I would cross-country ski down this winter because it was really steep, and going down hills on cross-country skis is terrifying, and sometimes I need that. And as far as skiing goes, like in the backcountry, a really incredible community member, Abby, who's also an on-ski rider, introduced me to like some of the backcountry areas at J Peak, which Indigenous place name would be Gwenaden, and being up there, like really making deep relationship with the trees. I spent a lot of time with trees and snow this winter, and it's so wonderful. And also being with BIPOC folks in the trees and like being introduced to like how to identify things and like why they're growing here, and like being in those environments, that's also been deeply grounding. So I think that's my answer for now. I'm also deeply in the snow space right now. I'm not gonna thaw for a while, but I do like hiking. I do like biking as well. I like anything with wind in my hair. So that's my answer.
All right, Kenya, would you like to speak next?
Sure. I mean, two things came to mind. First was there's like a little piece of woods. It's like, we call it the magic forest. It's like in Corinth where I grew up, and I can't describe it another way, but it's like a leaf carpet and then lots of tall trees, and you can kind of see through the forest. And it hasn't, it was logged like probably 100 years ago, but it hasn't like developed the underbrush that is in so many other forest areas. So my mom always called it the magic forest, so I like believed everything she said about it. And that's probably my favorite place outdoors in the world. But listening to Hannah talk, so I grew up in Corinth, and Corinth is home to the like oldest continuously running rope tow in the country. I don't know. There's some claim to fame. And I learned how to ski there, and it was like miserable, and I was terrible at it for a very long time. And then, I moved back here, and I have a daughter, and I was like, oh, this is so great. I can teach her how to ski where I learned how to ski. I can't do that, as it turns out. But Hannah was so gracious to like come over and teach my kid how to ski, and I could just like watch them like going very slowly across the hill back and forth, and they were so patient. And it was just like that moment I was just like, this is where I'm from, like this is where I live, and this is where I'm from, and there's my kid, and she's doing the thing that I did in the same place, and there's a community here who will support that. So that came up when you were talking. Thank you, Hannah.
All right, Debbie, would you like to talk about your favorite place, your favorite outdoor place in Vermont?
Yes. So I love, I am like such a townie, which is, I don't know, I think it's funny, and I keep grappling with it. Like I have visions of myself like backpacking, but actually when it gets down to it, like my favorite places are places that I don't have to drive to from a town center. So I love that towns in Vermont have made town trails, right? So here in Montpelier, we have like the North Branch Nature Center and Hubbard Park, and in Huntington at the Audubon Center, our trails are open every day of the year, sunrise to sunset. They're free. There's 5 miles of trails total, right? Like you would have to walk every single trail and do some loops to get to 5 miles. And they connect to the Birds of Vermont Museum trails to make it a little longer, right? So it's nothing excessive and strenuous. The Heinsberg town trails, like I love that you can just like walk from the grocery store in town and then be on like these lovely maintained trails. So that is, yeah, that's my favorite thing about ease of access to being outside here in Vermont.
Great. And Candace, would you like to share your favorite outdoor Vermont space?
Oh my goodness, that is really hard. I have to be honest. My favorite place is my backyard, but I'll leave that. I'll leave that for another place. And I will say, I will say this just because I love sharing this kind of story. part of my reason for really loving my backyard is because I've had the chance to spend time on this little piece of land, and it's gotten to know it really deeply, and for it to know me. And we have a conversation, we talk, okay? Me and the land here in my little backyard, we have conversations. And you know, so for example, I used to cook. Again, I'm a cook. So I used to cook and teach at Willow Crossing Farm in Jeffersonville, Vermont for many years. I used to work with Keith there for quite a while, and I used to cook in their outdoor kitchen there. And when you look outside their outdoor kitchen, there's this field of beautiful sumac in the background. And I remember coming home every year and being like, I want to have a sumac tree, just sumac trees, like looking out of my kitchen and just seeing sumacs. And I'll never forget that, like, from the time I started working there, and would say that literally sumac tree started to grow right outside of my kitchen window, just on its own. You know what I mean? I didn't plant it. It just, it wasn't growing there before, but this is the type of thing that I really love about when you truly are in relationship with the land. And honestly, like, you don't even have to really work that hard, to be quite honest with you, because it's innately in our DNA. Okay. It's going to communicate to you. There have been many times where I didn't even know I was going to need it, but things that, plant kin that started to grow wild in my backyard knew that I was going to be going through something, and knew that I was going to need their support. And they started to grow. When I lost my niece one year, in a really tragic accident, there was just these beautiful plants that started to grow that were deeply supportive to the emotions and to heart and to healing and from grief and just dealing with, just serious loss, And so this is the thing that I've had really, really, I've had a really beautiful opportunity to see how the land really listens. And if I just tend to it and speak with it and care for it, and I'm curious and come to it like a kid, it will respond back. So I have to give my little backyard, which is not super fancy, just a little bit of props, but I will list a couple. I love Gilbrook because it's just right down the road. Gilbrook Park. It has a cute little pond, and my partner, son, and I love to, do some either cross-country skiing or just walking and hiking through that little park. One of the first places I lived when we moved here to Vermont many years ago was Centennial Court, and right behind Centennial Court is Centennial Woods. And I love how Kenya was talking about the magical woods or the magical forest. My son used to call it as a kid, because we used to take him in there, and he was, he was little at the time, and he used to always be like, woo, like Centennial Court could be a little kind of spooky and cool to him. And he and my niece and my nephew used to always call it the freaky forest. And everybody, they were always like, I want to go to the freaky forest, They even came up with their own cool, like, cartoon map that they drew and named the different parts of the woods, their own fun, different, like, version of what they felt that part of the woods would be named, their own little kid names, which is super cute. And so those particular parks are really special to me. We spend a lot of time just walking through them and being with them. And lastly, I have to give props to Winooski, the Winooski River. It's a little river walk, but I love Winooski. I'm all about Winooski, my town. I have Winooski pride like nobody's business, okay? And so I just love being with the water, the energy of the river. There's a lot of emotion and release and healing and just transmutation and transformation that can happen near a body of water like that. So, and I also teach at Laughing River Yoga. So I had the privilege of teaching in a studio that overlooks the Winooski River as well. So that place is near and dear to my heart. And I will say this because I think it's important, again, to really link this kind of, not everything that you experience outdoors is always positive sometimes, and even with that there can be deep healing. And so I want to also honor that it was in the Winooski River that my niece had lost her life, and so it was a place that I really had a lot of deep pain, and it took a long time. It was a place that I loved and used to go to on my own and would read and do, my own spiritual reflective work there. And then there was a time where I needed to take space from it. And yet when I was ready to return, it was there, and in some way, even though it was something that was really hard for me, for a long time, I still feel like in a beautiful way that my niece is there. And so, I just want to honor that, like, sometimes, like I said, the history and lineage of the trauma we've experienced with the land doesn't mean that we can't rebridge and that the land isn't always there, waiting for us to come home. So.
That was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I think we have time for maybe a question or two. Guy, do you have any great questions from any of our members tuning in?
Yeah, there were so many great questions. Emily and I are trying to compile them, and there's all sorts of great ones. But yeah, I wanted to start with one from Anthony, who asked earlier, as a BIPOC person, I feel that hunting fits into this. How do you all feel about it? And then are there any groups for BIPOC hunters for people to be able to talk about this?
And that was
kind of an open question.
Reference to the relief efforts.
I was like, Candace, do you want to speak on this? But I mean, the answer is yes. The answer is hugely yes, for me. And I think I'm just thinking of like the relationship of like all the different ways that you can hunt, all the different like methods of hunting, and also like the relationship and the understanding and the knowledge and the wisdom that comes with each of those. And that's definitely something that community members have brought up, and that pursuing in the warmer months would be a really deep thing.
I'll just chime in really. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go.
Just really quick. I know I'm not always quick, but I'll try. I just want to also say, from the perspective of someone who's also in like the holistic health and wellness world, in the food world, especially where, and even in the yoga world, you know what I mean, where people can demonize and just, put down things like hunting and want to say that it's not, a part of sustainability or environmentalism or being in right relationship with the land. That's not true, period. It's really about how, it's really about the methods, the intention, even the sacredness behind it. I'm a believer in the full circle. Nature will teach us that, you know what I mean? And so I am going to become food for the land one day. You know what I mean? And the land is food for me. You know what I mean? And that is just how it's gonna go. You know what I mean? And however, the colonial way in which we hunt, the colonial way in which we rear food to then be eaten, even the ways in which we procure food, the fact that many of us have no relationship or understanding of what it means to, that life cycle. We just go into a store and pick up food that's already been packaged for us. That's why I homestead. This is part of the reason why I'm deeply committed to teaching about homesteading. I've got chickens, and if I had more land, I would be having pigs, I would be having goats, I would be having all that, not only for the purposes of like the ways in which they can also help to care for the land, but also to have for food, you know what I mean? And I'm not someone that is against that, but I also believe I'm not down for how we do it now. And so it's really about how we do it with that ancestral or indigenous knowledge and wisdom, and just the reverence for the life that is going to be nourishing us and the way we will nourish the land in return. So yes, hunting is definitely a part of it.
Thanks, Hannah and Candace. And we have, there was a little bit in that question about groups for BIPOC hunters, but there's an additional question that is really more broadly about Jacqueline asking if there are other affiliate groups for BIPOC individuals, Facebook, in person, otherwise, that will help her perhaps get involved with birding, farming, or she says literally anything else. And maybe if folks have something that just jumps to mind and you'd like to share that would be great. Also, you could jump in the chat as we get to a couple more questions.
The Relief Collective, that's like where you go for all your needs. You just ask for whatever you want, and there's someone out there who will answer.
And thank you, Sav, for putting the link to the reliefcollective.org in the chat. We appreciate that. And I can send that to Jacqueline too if that didn't get to you.
And I am pro these birding groups that people keep talking about too. Like, let's do some birding together. At Audubon, yes, yes, Candace, you can come. At Audubon, pre-pandemic in person, like when we were allowed to do that, from our office, some of our educators started a women who bird meetup, and they would go out birding for female identifying folks. And then our other colleague has been working with Outright Vermont and the Pride Center of Vermont to have a monthly Pride hike. So like, yes, email me, let's make a birding group too.
And we will try to follow up. We will be following up with all of our attendees after this, and so we'll share some of these suggestions and make sure that we have links and email addresses and those sorts of things.
And I see your question, Jacqueline. If you also want to just, check out my website again, I'm going to be like I said, we're going to be doing all kinds of homesteading, urban farming, workshops, mentorships, things like that. So please head to the website. You can email me. You can check out the information there. There's many opportunities. And I know Kenya is also a farmer, has some farming background too. So amongst all of us, we got it. We got you covered.
Good. Time for a couple more?
Want to do one more?
Oh boy.
Pressure's on.
I want to choose my question. But I want to choose this one. Andrea asked, can panelists talk about how their work, this is not a short one, I apologize. Can panelists talk about how their work overlaps, integrates, and or works with members of the Abenaki community?
I mean, I can speak a little bit to this. There's not much to say yet, unfortunately. There's lots of conversations that have been started with the Abenaki community, but referring to them as the Abenaki community is problematic because there are several different bands and they have several different needs and desires and hopes in their regions and on the land where they live. So I've spoken with many different leadership groups and individuals and never gotten the same answers. So it really depends on where you are and what you want to do. But I think that reaching out to leadership in your area may be the place to start if that's something that people are interested in doing. And I think that as long as we're talking about land, that's the first step. This is the land of the people who are here already. More so than anyone. I mean, I personally don't believe that we can own land, but if that's if we're talking about permission for moving places or doing things or creating a disturbance, then definitely. And I can't really give specifics. In my area, the person that I go to for these kind of questions is Chief Nate Pirro. He's part of a band that's not even recognized by the state. So there's all these layers, and it's sort of complicated. But yeah, happy to talk to anybody more about this if they want to, and also sort of try and direct you in the right to the right person that you might want to speak to in your area.
I know for me here on the homestead, we already have begun conversations. I specifically have been connecting with Melody Walker at Abenaki. And I actually used to work with Melody when I used to work for UVM many years ago. And so we've already had conversations about how we're going to do some collaborations here on the homestead and just start to build that connection and community and see how we can be of service and and just center their voices in the work that we're doing here on the homestead. It's deeply, I will say, humbling, you know what I mean? And I'm learning a lot and I'm open to learning as much as I can about that. So yeah, that's what we're kind of doing here. And we're going to be doing some, I'll share more. You'll just see later, but we're doing some really cool stuff in the coming months. So yeah.
I'd love to share an Alnu Abenaki initiative called Atui, and I'd put the link. Oh my goodness, I sent that not to everyone. I'll send that to everyone now. Here y'all go, round two. And from the site, it is an Alnu Abenaki community initiative to affirm Native relationships to the land and its inhabitants, raise Indigenous voices, and foster inclusion with understanding in place. And the word Atui is Western Abenaki for together in space and time, which is delightful. So I do think understanding, speaking solely for me. So when I'm coming into this, it's understanding like what my intentions are. Am I going in with good intentions? Am I going in trying to be in right relationship, or am I going in just because I want other people to think I'm being a good person because I'm like speaking to Indigenous voices? So I check myself, and then I do my own research, and like knowing that there are Indigenous-led projects within like my vicinity, seeing how I can support that, because I truly believe that like when you're grassroots, like you know what you need, and you are already asking for what you need. So it just takes someone to listen to what you're asking for. And also learning the language of the land, which is learning Abenaki, because that is what has been spoken here for over 10,000 years. And that is what's held in the soil, that's what's held in the environment. And there's a resource for that as well I can share out, but that's been a deeply humbling experience as well.
I will just add, since I work at a nature center, and so land that is owned by someone else who is not the original inhabitant of that land. And what the pandemic has taught me is that collaboration is like, I don't know, it feels like there are so many opportunities for partnerships, right? And the worst that happens is you ask and they say no, right? So if you have an idea for a project and there's a community that you want to incorporate, you can ask them if that partnership feels like it will be good for them, if that partnership will work for them, if that is something that they are interested in, what they need. Just because you invite them to the table, I heard Carolyn Finney say this, and I think is amazing, like, right, like the table might not be what they need or want to be at, right? They might not want to conform to the table that you have set, and that is also okay. But I think having those conversations is important. So I know that the Green Mountain Audubon Society board has been asking this question, like, what can we do? Who can we ask? And they are starting to have conversations to find the answers out because they didn't know. Yeah, ask.
Thank you.
I actually, can I add to this just really quick? Because
Yes.
this is something really important that I've also been learning, is that aside from the Abenaki, there are other Indigenous people that live here in Vermont as well. And so just wanting to create some voice around that and honoring at least the way that I'm trying to, in the little work that I'm doing here in my little backyard is, so for example, the foods that I'm growing this year together in community and growing for community. So we're growing food, but we're also planting and growing seedlings to give to BIPOC to grow themselves if they want. I have basically created I've received feedback from BIPOC within the community, and a lot of that feedback has come from Indigenous folks that are Abenaki, but also not Abenaki. And so we're in the process of growing food here that are BIPOC centered foods. And so we are growing foods that are Cherokee foods, and we're growing, and we're also trying to gather seeds. That's a big part of it, is just seed saving, and seed stewardship is a huge part of that. And so I just wanted to say that, because even in my conversations with folks that are Abenaki, there's this, acknowledgement that like not only the Abenaki live here too, and that there's ways that we can also be of service to Indigenous folks within Vermont that are Abenaki and not. So that's one way that I'm trying to. And if there's any way, I'm always open to more feedback and more learning.
I know we're done. I just want to add one last thing. Thank you for saying that, Candace. The Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, who I'm working with to do all of this land work, part of their process is an Indigenous consultation process, and they're happy to offer that service to other groups and anyone who is interested just like making sure their project meets with the community's agreement, basically. And they're very cool and all the other things they do too, but that's something that's relevant to this part of the conversation. So thank you.
We can share their information in our follow-up. I love that we ended on that question. I feel like you all brought a great deal of insight into that question that's really relevant across, across the topics that we've covered tonight. So thank you all. We have collected all of the questions. If there are resources that Keegan and Guy and I have that we can share that will help answer them, we certainly will. And we'll make sure to collect and share the various groups and email addresses and opportunities to get involved that we've discussed tonight. Keegan, do you want to close us out?
Sure, yes. I feel so moved and inspired, and I could listen to you speak for another 3 hours. Thank you all for sharing so generously about your work and your experiences. This was really wonderful. So thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who attended, and have a good evening.